Hello, everyone. Welcome to Guru You. This is our holiday edition with very, very special guest, Stewart Pearce, who we are so excited to have with us today. Thank you, Stewart, for your yes, for being here with us and for sharing the energy of this amazing holiday time, for all the Christ light that is coming through. And we're going to have a fabulous discussion today. I'm so excited. And before I go there, I would love to introduce our very, very special guest. Stewart Pearce is a legendary master of voice and presence coach who has worked with royalty, actors, CEOs, changemakers, and celebrities for 40 years. He was the head of voice at the Webber Douglas Academy, London from 1980 to 1997, helped pioneer Shakespeare's Globe Theatre as master of voice between 1997 and 2010, and has coached luminaries such as Eddie Redmayne, Matthew Good, Hugh Bonneville, Mark Rylance, Amelia Clark, Margaret Thatcher, of course, Diana, Princess of Wales, Marianne Williamson, and the London 2012 Olympic bid, just to name a few. Stewart has published The Alchemy of Voice, The Heart's Note, The Angels of Atlantis, and our very proud and amazing topic for today, Diana, the Voice of Change, which expresses entirely new revelations about Diana's life principles and how she ignited personal radiance. Stewart, thank you so much for your yes and for being here with us today. Thank you, thank you, thank
Oh,
you, and
it's
welcome.
an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's such fun. You're a beautiful, beautiful lady, and you hold such extraordinary witness to to spirit, to the divinity of what we most believe in. So it's an absolute pleasure to be here.
Thank you, thank you. So, what would you like to share with us most on this beautiful day? I know we're going to be speaking of this beautiful piece of work.
Oh my goodness me. What would I, well, you know, as always, the angels are with me. The angels of Atlantis are with me. And I hadn't until this moment looked into the oracle of the angels of Atlantis. And, you know, for the initiation, as it were, of our conversation and all that we can bring forth for the wonderful viewers who are tuning in, I thought it may be interesting to look at the alpha and the omega, you know, the beginning and the ending, the top card and the bottom card of the 44 cards within the oracle. Because we know 44 is an extraordinary vibration within ancient numerology, which is associated with spiritual purity. So it lines us with Atlantis, it lines us with the angelic communion, but obviously it aligns us with our own being because we have 44 codons of DNA that are dormant within our bodies. You know, we have a 12 helix, but we're only living a double. So I thought it may be interesting to call on them because they, you know, they always love to be present. And the fascinating thing is that the first card is Jophiel, the angel liberator, the divine liberator, and of course the divine feminine, and the quality of forgiveness. And so I feel that if there is a divine essence that we're being asked to really embody at this time, it is divine forgiveness. It is mercy, which of course percolates all the way through from the divine heart of the exquisite feminine within the consciousness of the galaxy, and of course comes into our presence through the Ho'oponopono. And so it's absolutely beautiful to be this. And then the second card is Radziel, the angel of the mysteries. Yay! And it's all about our dreams, you know, our daydreams and our night dreams, and how I believe in this moment, you and I are creating a spell where we bring into our dreaming the world that we wish to create, the brave new world, which is going to be full of love and joy.
Oh, what a perfect and auspicious beginning. And even I feel like this card coming in is even the essence of Diana, for I feel that forgiveness was one of her hugest gifts that she really showed she was capable of. Her capacity to open her heart in any circumstance, regardless of what was in front of her, was really, truly inspiring.
I believe you're true. You know, this was my experience of her through 2 years of sacred relationship. I mean, the story that I commit myself to as a partial autobiography, it was how we met within the book Diana, the Voice of Change, because I was approached by a wonderful, wonderful woman who knew Diana very well, who had been a great patroness of mine. She was a leading restaurateur. It was where, you know, when Madonna was in town, she would go to the restaurant where, when, you know, when Diana was constantly there, etc., etc., etc. And Mara had her name was Mara Burney. Alas, she's now passed. But Mara approached me and said, "There's someone I want you to meet, darling. I think you could help her tremendously." And I said, "Who's that?" She said, "Well, Princess Diana." And I said, "Oh, really? I mean, she's such a darling, but she's surrounded by a circus of activity. I don't think I could get involved in that, you know, because my work is so quintessential that it, you know, getting caught up in that frenzy. This was before the Martin Bashir interview, the Panorama interview, before the divorce.
Right.
Um, and then Mara revisited me and set me up because she said, come and have lunch at San Lorenzo." And I mean, her food, or the food in the restaurant, was absolutely extraordinary. And I'm a great foodie, so I thought, wow, okay. And she said, "There's somebody I want you to meet." And I said, "Who is that?" And she said, "Just come, darling, just come, just come." And I said, "Who is it?" And I could feel this extraordinary energy. And I said, "Who?" And she said, "Just come. You know, don't be tedious, just come." So I said, "Okay." So I went. And I was full of this feeling of partial nervousness, and walked into the restaurant and said to Pepe, the head waiter, "Where is Madame and who is she with?" And he said, "You'll see when you get there." So I went downstairs into the basement of the restaurant, into this salon privé, you know, this private room, walked in, and there was Mara and there was Diana. And Diana grabbed hold of my arm and said, "You will work with me, won't you?" I mean, she was such a darling. And these sapphire blue eyes, I fell in love. I mean, it was just her luminescence, her gentleness, the absolute authenticity, that she was all right there. And there was nothing at all that was misplaced in terms of an egoic presentation of, "Remember, I am a princess," you know.
Right.
And I said, "Well, what do I call? Oh, call me Diana." You know, whereas I'd been brought up, my father worked for the royal family, and I'd been brought up to all of that very austere protocol of, you know, you don't say anything until you're spoken to, and then you say "Your Majesty" or "Your Royal Highness," and then after that you can say "Sir" or "Ma'am." No, what am I saying? "Ma'am." Sorry, it has to rhyme with spam. That's the way they do it. Diana said, "No, just call me Diana." And here was this exquisite being. And so I remember saying to her, "But we must keep this completely confidential. I feel that the way that I can serve you best is if we work just the two of us in absolute confidence, because I feel that the next 2 years are going to be immense for you. Is that possible?" And she said, "Absolutely." Good on her. She said, "What does it mean?" And I said, "Okay, it means I never come to Kensington Palace. You always come to me. That whenever invoices are sent, we actually do it in a clandestine way. So pay me cash. Whenever you need me, call me on your cell and we'll organize it. So we don't go through your household. It's a huge protocol experience. You have to go through secretary, this secretary, this secretary. It's just going to be you and I." She agreed to all the details, and there began the most extraordinary relationship, where she confided in me. What an honor, what an honor. And I was able to serve her to my hilt, as the book portrays.
It does portray, and it's very clear to me, the integrity that you chose to keep in writing this book and how it's written, and really that it's a guidebook for all of us, right? So it's your connection to Diana and your experience with her and the story of her even before your meeting. And at the same time, it's this connection of how we also move through these stages that you shared with her to reach our own mastery. It's really
Yeah,
all
she
there.
was very canny, you know, this extraordinary intuition bordering on the development of really precise psyche, immensely prescient about people. And of course, as we saw, this very earthed, authentic presence. But I remember her saying to me one day, "This work is so, I want you to know, Stewart, darling, this work is so, so important. You've helped me so much. One day you'll write a book about this." And I said, what do you mean? I'd never, ever, because she'd worked with many healers. And after the tenure had completed, or whatever the experience was, where they decided to move apart, although they had signed an NDA, that many of these people went off to the daily papers and made thousands and thousands of pounds out of their articles. And I said to her, I swear I will never ever do this. So when you say write a book, I'll never write a book, not without your permission. She said, I'm giving you a permission. But look, if anything happens to me, can you wait until the boys are married? And I said, oh, yes. And it was very en passant, but it was prophetic. She knew. And there was she was a very, 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 very sensitive being, as we know, an empath of extraordinary degree. And there was that slight license that she had, where she could move gently towards a hyperextension of her deep emotionality, which could almost border on neuroses. And I was always bringing her back from that edge and saying, okay, I just think we need to get calm and grounded. Let's be still for a moment while we consider, because unusual things happened to her, where, for example, the car brakes would fail, and she was an amazingly good driver. So she would be able to maneuver the car into a lamppost, or a sidewalk or whatever, so that the car would actually brake itself, or use the handbrake aggressively. Very
Wow.
strange things. Her cell phone would go missing, always getting a new cell phone. And often she felt that there was a dark presence following her. I mean, literally in human form. And certainly I noticed a number of unusual things happening around me as well. Where I know a number of photographs which she gave me, or photographs that we played with, because cell phones were really becoming around in 95, 96. So we played taking photographs, the first selfies. But all of those were stolen from the back of my car.
Wow. 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 As you say, there was a litany of energy that really surrounded the entire, it's a whole other animal that most of us don't ever get to experience, with the awareness that being royal has many, many layers to it. And I'm not surprised by any stretch that even if what you were doing was private, it was never 100% private. It couldn't be. Couldn't be. But what I love in the book was that you wrote, Diana may have been victimized, but she rarely saw herself as a victim. So her light became not just an attainment, but a true delight.
That's a lovely phrase, isn't it?
Yes, it really is. It really
I mean, although I was the instrument that brought the book forth, she was, it was very extraordinary, because when I sat down with my agent and we decided what the book would be, I was quite fierce about, I don't think I should do this. I don't think. She said, no, no, no. My agent is a great friend. She said, just be quiet, Stewart. So, um, the book could look like this. And immediately Diana came in. And then I said, well, it's very interesting, because I've got the next 3 or 4 months in my diary with sparse activities, because I had planned in spending it writing. And then as soon as I committed myself to writing the book, all of the activities there were 4 very large corporate contracts, they were all postponed. So I had 4 months of stillness actually in this room where I am right now. And Diana was with me. I was like a hermit for 4 months. Diana was with me, and we had such fun. We remembered all the old times. And so she gave me the whole of the book. And I said, should I write that? Write it. Of course. And we were always giggling, because she was just always find the absurd in life, to bring everything back to balance and just to get grounded, always coming back to the absolute essence of our ordinariness, which of course was the secret to her extraordinariness. The
Absolutely.
fact that she was just so truly authentic, and that her love was the fountain spring of her creativity. And I feel that we all felt that. And to a certain degree, as I, sort of jettison into what is the book really all about? And as you and I know, the book is really the beginning of a journey of finding ways of healing the hearts of so many people who are still caught in startle reflex from that moment when we heard that she had passed or that she was involved in this terrible car accident. And we all, and then, of course, as we know, what took place is that we heard that she was dead. And I will never forget the experience that I had where I was in New Mexico working. And I remember going and having brunch with some friends and just casually, you know how you do, looking over the shoulder of somebody who was reading USA Today. And on the front cover was Diana dead. And the howl that came out of me, it was just extraordinary. And of course, you know, we know that 3.9 billion people, 3.5 billion people wept.
Yes.
So the book is really about returning us back to the firmament of what her love is all about, that wonderment, so that we can heal that aspect of grieving and understanding more about what it is to transition, particularly if one is a chosen one, you know, rather like Martin Luther King or JFK or Robert Kennedy. Or Malcolm X or Gandhi, you know, we begin to recognize that these chosen ones are often taken from us very quickly. But what their service or sacrifice is, that they awaken Shakti, and the wave of Shakti that spreads through is something that is a transcendental energy to provide us in that moment with the incandescence of what love is all about. And therefore brings us to a healing if we're not in loving, if we're fractured from our loving. So yeah, I mean, it's boundless, absolutely boundless. The fact that she is this portal through which the divine feminine pours.
I agree. It's definitely an energetic frequency of grace. And, you know, again, as you describe in the book, how she was willing to not just go to see people with HIV, but that she would touch their hand, that
Mm,
she had such compassion and no fear
mm.
and knew what was necessary in that moment, following her guidance and her heart rather than what she may have been told or whatever the protocols were. It was so far beyond the expectation of anyone. I mean, I feel like any normal person in that instance would have been afraid. And she just extraordinarily bypassed all of that through her heart.
It was very simple, you see. She just loved.
Yeah.
And she felt that her whole raison d'etre was just simply to be an embodiment of what that love was all about. And so the royal protocol was that you wore gloves, that the women wore gloves, and that it was would always be glove against flesh rather than flesh against flesh. And for her, that seemed absurd because it meant that there wasn't the electrical contact that she needed. You know, when the sorry about that, that's a
That's okay.
signal which will go away. A But she spoke so much about the need to be absolutely in contact on whatever level, because this was the only way that she could express the totality of her love. So one of the facts that we don't know, which I reveal in the book, is that whenever she wasn't engaged, wherever she was in the world, but particularly in this city of London where I am today, that wherever she was not engaged in official activities, she would just get in the car and drive up to a hotel, a hospital rather, go into the reception of the hospital and say, is there anybody that I can be with? Can you imagine that there you are, a hospital receptionist, and suddenly in walks Diana saying, can I sit with anybody? And she would go and spend 2 or 3 hours every evening just holding somebody's hand or hugging them.
Wow.
A hug is environmentally friendly, she would say. So yeah, it was a very natural thing for her to do, and it wasn't an activity. I mean by that, by going in and meeting AIDS patients and touching or hugging them. It wasn't actually what a number of the members of the press pointed out, that it was merely something that was stage managed to improve her own glamour. That was a misperception of who she really was. It was purely about the transmission of these people are dying. These people are disenfranchised. These people are the weapons that, they were being weaponized because of the fear of AIDS in the 80s, which of course, isn't it interesting how we're experiencing, hopefully, the end of this pandemic, recording in late November. No, what am I saying? It's beginning of December, isn't it? 2020. And yet at that time, we were all fearful of this specter called AIDS or HIV. And now we found a way of corralling it. And of course, as we know, many people who are HIV positive are often living without taking retroviral drugs. So at some point, I know that Diana will help us with this extraordinary pandemic, and we will see it abate.
I agree 110%. I want to move a little bit into the energy of what you're offering in this book, not just through Diana, but through the wisdom that you've received. One of my favorite quotes that I've read is, "Our voices tell our stories. They are the very blueprint of our psyche, and how we use our voice utterly changes our lives."
It's
Oh,
hearing one's words back at one is sort of like, wow, it's pretty good. It's pretty
it's
good.
well
Um,
done.
unequivocally, yes. In all true quintessence, yes. And this is not new, of course. It is an old belief system, but unfortunately, it hasn't been in the forefront of our consciousness for essentially 450 years, since the beginning of the Age of Enlightenment, when we became fixated on "I think, therefore I am," rather than "I think and feel, therefore I am what I am." We became purely condensed by the need for the cerebralization of our consciousness, which of course has brought us some very extraordinary developments and advancements, including the rise of literacy, including the acquisition of extraordinary information about the world and the way that the world pulses and breathes, and how we can become more wiser about our personal relationships and our interpersonal skills. Of course it has. And it's led us towards our sovereignty. But at the same time, as we know, it has also created devastating misuse within the Gaia, within our natural world, and has moved everybody into the cerebralization of commercialization and capitalism. So now all we do is live in the head. And so our voices are just in the head. So everybody's running around like this. And of course, although I have a passionate love affair with the United States of America, I mean, we get this real thing going on. You know what I'm saying? Oh my God. And in fact, all we're doing is competing with the noise of the machines and the noise of our own consciousness. So as we go back into our history, particularly, I speak as a Western man, within Europe, there was a great belief that sound was at the core of creation, and that if it was in the core of creation in the sense that God said, "Let there be light," and there was light, or as the Hopi will say, the Spider Woman sang, and as she sang, she created the mountain, she created the deer, she created the Great Plains, she created you and me. And of course, those resonances go on through every single world culture or faith. But they also believed in persona. They believed in the nature of persona, which in Latin means per through, sona sound. So that we reveal the essence of our beings quintessentially through our voices, through our sound. And so therefore we have within our bodies a mechanism that will always restore our harmony, that will always restore us to coherence, that will always ground us and earth us. But principally, once we found a way of living meaningfully within the energy of our bodies, that will open us to the essence of our soul, and we can find the song of our soul. So I'm returning everybody to that essential belief that if we can find our note, that we each have a note, which comes right out of the heart. And as Rumi says, if words arise from the heart, they enter the heart. If words arise from the tongue alone, they don't pass beyond the ears. But there is this over vociferation of opinionization in the world. I mean, we've, of course, met it hugely in the last year because of the surfeit of the maladministration that we've seen in most of the major power centers around our planet, both within the British government and also within the US government. And now there is a balance that is returning. And so the two people that are stepping forward to lead the United States, or both speak from their hearts, are engaged in the traffic of the heart.
Well, and you also speak of the architecture of the body and inhabiting your body, right? Allowing that to be part of the navigational system rather than, like you're speaking of, just this ego and consciousness from the head and from this place of noise and static. We can use our entire vessel in that feeling.
Yeah, yeah. And what's interesting is you see that when we really tune into our bodies and when we allow our voices to sound our note, we have a bio-identity kit, meaning that our voices are in absolute parallel with our fingerprint, with the iris, and with the blueprint of our DNA. And so, of course, we know in cybersecurity, the voice is being used more and more and more in conjunction with the iris as a key to unlock the door that is within cyberspace. And so, by really tuning into our bodies, and I give lots of exercises and meditations in the book of, as you've just very beautifully said, the architecture of our bodies, that when the architecture of our body, like a great building, is balanced, and that we are breathing the very source of life. Most people are completely unaware of their breath, and yet it is the very substance of their life. It is pranayama. It is may the force be with you. It is the great chi, that when we tune into the breath, that automatically we give life to our voices because we can't make sound without breath. That if we're feeling our bodies, we're feeling our breath, and we're positioning our sounds, we move into this extraordinary relaxation or harmony or feeling of stillness, which of course means that we feel a way of dispatching all of our power, optimized creativity, inflow with ease, and absolute articulation. It becomes so much easier rather than trying to respond to the do. And of course, most of the time we're not doing what we could be doing because they say so, whoever they are. And they may not be living human beings, but they're certainly specters in our consciousness from childhood. I mean, I as a child could not do what they wanted me to do. I now know that I was profoundly dyslexic and synesthetic. I had a crossover of the senses. So I was seeing sound. And so when the human behavior was harmonic and loving and gracious and compassionate and kind, I was just lulled by these amazing pastel colors that for me were all waves of energy. So I would literally jump onto the waves and I would float the waves. I would leave my body and jump on the waves astrally. But a lot of, because I seemed to command so much irritation in people and disapprobation because I couldn't do what they wanted, that they just became angry. They were frustrated and frightened because I was talking about a world that they couldn't see, that they became earnest in their disapprobation of me and then often shouted. And when they shouted, I would see it was like the energy became like shards of glass flying at me. So of course, as a child, I would do this, and they thought that I was crazy. So I was locked away in a psychiatric unit within a hospital for some time until this brilliant female pediatrician came along and said, this child, there's nothing wrong with this child. He's just a hypersensitive. Today, we would say borderline autistic or ADHD or whatever, this is a special child. And my mother said, thank God, because although she was my lifesaver, she was also a woman who believed absolutely in the patriarchy because that's exactly what we did, and I was born in the very early 50s. So we were just recovering from a world war, and the world was a very different place from the one that it is today. So all of these hardships, as you see, I don't talk of them as being terrible wounds. They're all scar tissue. They just led me to the glory of what I'm now trying to communicate through the breath of Diana, through the essence of Diana in this book. If I may say, I feel the pièce de résistance of the book is the last chapter, where we really begin to enter into understanding who was she? And I refer to as being the chosen one, the anointed one, and how, although she was not going to be the Queen of England, she was certainly the queen of so many hearts around the planet, that what we needed to do was to ritualize that ascent, because in this culture, within the sacrament or the consecration of the monarch, there is this extraordinary part of the ceremony, which in Queen Elizabeth II's coronation, although it was televised, this sacred part was non-televised. And it's when the head of the monarch, the breast of the monarch, and the hands of the monarch are touched by sacred oil that goes all the way back to Solomon's temple by the so-called high priest of the land, the Archbishop of Canterbury, so that in that moment when the sovereign is touched, they literally become a high priest or a high priestess, and they become a conduit for the divine. So we move back into the ancient belief about kingship and queenship, of sovereignty. This is why Elizabeth II, our present queen, will die a queen. Do you see? She will never abdicate. She believes that her duty is to serve her people as high priestess, although she would never say that. She doesn't have that level of vainglory, but she is here simply to serve with as much grace and as much duty and with as much kindness as she can until she breathes her last breath. So Diana and I went through this process of identifying the refined qualities that she had that had always been dismissed by the critics because they simply didn't understand the immense hypersensitivity of the empath.
As you wrote about her personal boundaries. Yeah, right.
She didn't have any. When we met, she didn't have any. She
Thought.
just oozed everywhere. And then, of course, there would be retaliation from people who simply didn't understand that level of fine feeling. You know, they were purely cerebral and everything was purely cognitive. And no, you can't do that, you know. And as everybody knows, the firm, meaning the royal family, are really governed by the courtiers.
Yes.
These men in grey suits, as Diana said, you know, they're faceless, and could be very cruel. The heart was not present.
No, not present at all. But with your assistance, learning to know your limits and be aware of your feelings and be direct and honest, which I think she usually was. Though I'm guessing within the frame of the monarchy, there were certain things she had to not say. Um,
A lot
but
of the time, until
yeah,
the last years, you know.
yeah,
And what's interesting is that the way was prepared by her ex-husband,
yes,
who a year before the famous Martin Bashir panorama interview that Diana gave, where she said there were three people in this marriage, that's when I came along at that time. That's when she sought me out, I should say, just after that, because she saw the effect that that BBC interview had on the world, and she realized that she needed to be informed about how to deal with the vibration of collective thought that came to her. And so we worked on preparing her field, her energy field, so that she could actually be completely commensurate with whatever that thought was, which was mostly in her favor, but also be absolutely content with her own field so that she didn't absorb the rankness of some of the commentary, which of course, as we know, there's a force of darkness in our world that can be very manipulative, as we see, for example, through what we've been through this year. And I was just, you see, all of my work is really, I feel it's about reminding people of who they are. It's all a remembering that we all have this information in ourselves, And when it's significant, all we need is someone to say, but look, and it's ping, epiphany, a eureka moment, where the information percolates up into the forefront of our consciousness rather than being hidden sub rosa. You know, that's what I find fascinating, that Radziel should come forth, because what Radziel is doing is really opening up all of those corridors of thought and feeling and allowing the ancient mysteries to come to the fore when it's appropriate for them to come forth. And we're in this time of huge awakening, aren't we? So
Yeah.
it's interesting that Diana is returning through the success of the Crown series, through the dispute over, did Martin Bashir, before interviewing her, did he tell porky pies? No, did he tell lies? Was he full of falsehood? Or was that something else that was contrived, you know? And the development of what is really important in relation to the refinement and the expression of the divine feminine through you amazing women, how so many women are really finding their voices. And the next chapter of history, of course, will be written by the women and the girls, there's no doubt. I quote His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And we're seeing it, aren't we? We're seeing Jacinta Ardern, for example, in New Zealand. And there are 7 other powerful women that have stepped forward that are now running countries, particularly in Central Europe. So there's a huge movement. And as I express this, I realize that, you know, the book is merely the beginning of something that will be called the Diana Heart Path, to serve the women of the world, particularly those who are empathic or those who are awakening to their, you know, they're being initiated into their spirit. That we begin to realize that when we come together, we have a force of communion that will really help to create this brave new world. And thereby, the force of communion can be a constructive mechanism that will allow us to really feel a way of creating the absolute pathway of what our brilliance can be about. That we're here to optimize our creativity full of love and joy and to live the greatest vision of ourselves. And so she comes as our emblem and really wants to be with us through all of this functioning.
Yes, it's very clear. It's very clear that she does. And you're right. She came in this time and space as this angelic energy, as this emissary of being a bridge to the awareness that some of us are still choosing divided sides or getting lost in the minutia of what's unfolding, getting lost in the sides that we're seeing, forgetting about why we've really come. And I've even watched this in the spiritual community, which has been an interesting unfolding, with the awareness that everything is going to come to completion and where it needs to go. It's all happening in divine order. And at the same time, really desiring to remain neutral and observe and then make choices. And this book to me really is a beautiful stepping stone and guide to assist people through what's happening on the planet right now, especially getting into gratitude. I mean, really, like you wrote, gratitude means feeling delight. And I've never thought of gratitude in that way, but it really is, because oftentimes when I go into my gratitude process, I feel so much joy that I move to tears, because I am in awareness that I live in this magnificent place. I have a magnificent home. I have magnificent family and friends. Like, I really, when I count my blessings, they're too many to count. And so that feeling of delight is really overwhelming, and it reminds us to go back to the simplicity of why we are here.
Well, thank you. Yes, because I feel that Diana wants the book to be a testament to every woman, that it's not just about her, that it's, you know, that she kept on repeating to me, you know, this is a vessel that will assist millions and millions of women around the world to be able to live their truth, to be able to live their courage, to be able to live their gratitude, to be able to live their gentleness, to enable them to live their grace, which is why the 3 Gs had to be explored within the book. And they were certainly creative effulgence, you know, creative outpourings of what she was all about in nature, one of the sweetest, one of the most grateful. Whenever anything happened that was moving, she would always write a letter the following day. She would always bring a photograph and sign the photograph. She would always bring gifts, always thanking, always thanking. And her thanks were always so delightful, because she would do it with such giggling mirth and easy love, childlike love. It was just boundless innocence that it was such fun to practice really receiving the purity of what that is all about. And I'm sure you would agree that, so many of us have become so caught within the giving of our generosity that when we're given to, when we're in a position of receivership, that actually we become embarrassed by receiving, as opposed to allowing the energy through stillness to just drop deep into the crucible of our hearts and receive. I know it's one of the fundamental aspects of what I teach and remind people, often very august people, the great and the good, or the not so great and not so good, that I'm very free with my superlatives, not in any superfice, but if they're really, if somebody's said something beautiful or has done something extraordinary, I feel that they need to be rewarded. And that the more we actually smile and say, that was amazing. Do you realize what effect that had? That was fantastic. Thank you. And if they become embarrassed, no, 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 it's like, wait a minute. How can it just be a one-way street? Your giving is an immense generosity. It's your service. So we need to give to you. So just stand there and we're going to love you into shape.
Perfect way to put it. And it's true that reciprocity is usually challenging for people who desire to give because we love so much. But the reciprocity is imperative. The infinity, right? It has to go back and forth and come around and know that in all things, that is our birthright to all abundance, is that energy exchange.
And so our hearts become physiologically harmonized, healed, because obviously the way that the energy of our heart flows through the ventricles and the aortas is in a figure of eight. So we become literally healthier. Our hearts become healthier. And if they become healthier, then we can love even more abundantly and have greater fun in doing what we're here to do, which of course is not being superficial and absurd. It's actually just simply to remind people steadfastly that love is all there is. And as it says in A Course in Miracles, that fear is a complete hallucination. But what we need to do is to realize what our fears are so that we can learn our capacity for what might and majesty we can create to live the greatest vision of ourselves. And of course, what's interesting as we examine her life is that we saw this because she was the most photographed woman in recorded history. Isn't that extraordinary? That we saw the development from the ugly duckling, as it were, into this extraordinary, beautiful woman. Every day I'm very interactive with a very large community through social media who have bought the book and read the book and love the book, and I'll put a post up and thousands and thousands and thousands of people will click on it, so that we are in awe, in wonder of the exquisite beauty. So the more she discovered a way of containing her love through energy boundaries and through the firmament of the richness and the value of her love, the more she began to literally, her radiance began to expand. And we worked very, very specifically on allowing her to feel how her field could expand rather than contract through fear, that she would breathe her field into expansion. She would use visualization processes to do with the chakra of really expanding so that she could accommodate the might of all of that divine glory that was pouring through her as the fontal or the cipher by which truth could be read at that time. And I feel that we all saw that, so that when we see, it's true, of course, that she had great financial means to acquire the beautiful clothes that she wore and the exquisite hairdressing. She had all of that. But at the same time, her choices were always immensely noble It was never about self-aggrandizement. It was purely and simply, well, beauty is an emanation of the divine. And I feel that I'm now acquiring a value or a recognition of my own value in my own beauty. And this is what it's all about. And, and therefore Catherine Walker came in, and, all of the other great designers came in to help her be the divine female that she was, almost as though Venus and Aphrodite and Hathor were just sort of pouring through her.
Absolutely. And
But at the same time, she could be so ordinary, where she would just get up, put no lip, a little bit of lippy maybe, and then just jump into the car, drive over and see me in sweatshirt and jogging pants. And the first thing she would say is, "Oh, do you have any washing up I can do? Can I do some washing up? I know, I'm going to iron your shirts." And I would say, "No, okay, there's washing up over there. Let's go into the kitchen. You can do the washing up if you want to." I would leave cups and saucers. I don't mean heavy duty. That stuff would go into the dishwasher, But I would leave cups and saucers so that she could get grounded. This is how ordinary she was,
wow.
and was obviously, was very, as we see through her story. By that I mean her life story. That she was fascinated by her body as a young woman. She became a keen athlete, wanted to be a dancer. And so to tune her into her body, it was not a difficult thing to do, because she loved feeling her body. Obviously not when she was wrenching the insides of her stomach out through bulimia, but when she began to calm, she loved feeling the power of what her body was about, and how it reassured her that she was okay, she was stable, she was secure.
Yeah, I think safety is a big one for everyone, really. Feeling safe in the body and
Mm.
back
Mm.
into that vibration and frequency. Yeah.
The word secure, which really is what we're looking at in safety, isn't it? Feeling safe, feeling secure. The word secure in Latin means secure, self-cure.
Wow.
So it's not about plugging into something on the outside of us. It's actually about plugging into something on the inside of us, of using the heart as a USB port to plug into source energy. And this is these were some of the physical experiences that we investigated.
Oh, that's remarkable, right? We have an operating system that's gone awry because it's been filled with virus energy. And so we're learning how to remove the virus and really figuratively, and in some cases, literally, and really move towards the programming of our original divine blueprint and
Mm.
remembering who we are, like you said. It is a remembering. It really is.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah. Oh, Stuart, thank you so much for this time. And I'm so excited to share with everyone that you are offering us two beautiful meditations that will also be available in addition to this show being free, no matter when anybody wants to tune in. This will be forever a free show that Stuart has gifted to the network and to all of us. So we are in deep, deep gratitude for that. Would you share just a little bit about these meditations that we will have access to?
Yes, I mean it's such, I love giving gifts, so it's so easy, and to give a thing of beauty. So I try to find out, well, what do people want? Well, hopefully this will be in access to lots and lots and lots and lots of people. So it's difficult to do it personally, but if I look into the collective and see through all of the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people who come to me for readings or healings or counselings, um, that this is Christmas time. And I felt that we needed to be reminded of the essence that pours through the five great faiths, through Christianity, through Judaism, through Islam, through Hinduism, through Buddhism. And what's interesting is that we have a sacred language in our midst, which is called Aramaic, that always communicates the ancient teachings of the high priestesses of Atlantis, and of course of the so-called Holy Land that we refer to it being, Palestine. And so I made a recording of the Lord's Prayer in Aramaic and set my voice into the center of the temple. It's an unusual language. It's unusual to the ear, but I worked hard in specializing with a Judaic scholar that I know, who's a client of mine, who's a rabbi, a female rabbi, who
Awesome.
is just stunning and, reads ancient Hebrew. And anyway, she was able to tell me, no, this is Aramaic, Stuart. And so we worked on it. And there is a translation. So there is that. And then the second offering is that we live at a time of extraordinary exposition of the empath. And we're
Mhm.
just slowly beginning to discover the power of empathic feeling and thought. And of course, Diana was an empath. You are an empath. I am an empath. So we're learning to define ourselves and then to find a way of coordinating our force, recognizing that we're purely conduits for divine power. So the second meditation is called Being an Empath is a Superpower. So we come back to the fact that the egoic consciousness of cerebralization is one power, but has led us awry. And now we're coming back to the fact that feeling is the language of the soul, not thinking, feeling. And that our thoughts are really great divining rods, perhaps to steer our way through the landscape that we're living on planet Earth. But actually, we need to come back to feeling. And if feeling is not present, then we're awry. And so, yeah, hopefully the essence, the resonance, the quintessence of what I prepared is going to help everybody to refine themselves.
I already know it's true. I can feel as you speak the words, the energy, and I'm just in such deep gratitude. I want to make sure that everyone knows that you can get Diana, the Voice of Change, on Amazon, which is where I picked up my copy. And it's really a remarkable piece that I highly recommend everyone connecting with. It's not just, it's the divine feminine within all of us. So please know that if you're tuning in and you are a divine masculine, you have your divine feminine within you as well. And there is such great power in the balance between the two, which I feel is what this time is all about, right? The divine feminine will lead, but not to walk ahead of the divine masculine, but next to the divine masculine, right? We're here to be in equanimity and love.
And and for the men out there who are psychic sleuths, the book really answers the unanswerable and questions the unquestionable about who was she and what was that death all about. Was it a ritual killing, etc., etc.? So I trace the whole of the substance of what that is all about for those people who are really interested. So you can get caught up in an extraordinary um, magical mystery journey into the very core, not just of Diana as a woman, but who she was as a vessel of ancestry, revealing a very unique lineage of spiritual beings going all the way back to Jeshua and the Magdalene.
It is a magnificent weaving of the left brain and the right brain and the heart. That is my awareness of what this offers, because it gives the each side of the brain something to process, and then of course to bring it all back into the heart center. So thank you for sharing your magnificent work. Thank you for this time today. I'm so grateful to you.
It's been wonderful. Thank you so much for bringing me on. It's been an absolute joy and wonderful to meet you. So thank you, thank you, thank you, and to everybody who tunes in. And we record. How many days is it before Christmas? We have 20 days to go, I think. It's the
Yeah.
fifth day. Yes, so we have 20 days to go. So Merry Christmas and a happy, happy, happy New Year. Peace and goodwill be with all people.
And so it is. Thank you all for joining us, and I'll see you again soon.